Christmas Eve, 1953. Families across New Zealand were gathered, preparing for a night of joy and celebration. But on one railway line cutting through the shadow of Mount Ruapehu, a tragedy was waiting. In just minutes, a train carrying hundreds would collide not with another locomotive, but with the raw, unstoppable power of a volcano. This is the story of the Tangiwai Railway Disaster, the night the mountain struck and a nation wept. The Wellington to Auckland express train was more than just a ride that night. It was Christmas Eve. Packed carriages carried soldiers on leave, families heading home, children eager to open presents the next morning. The train roared northward, its headlights slicing through the darkness, the rhythmic clatter of wheels against steel soothing passengers into a sense of safety. No one on board could have imagined that the very tracks beneath them were about to give way. High above, on the slopes of Mount Ruapehu, something sinister had been brewing for years. The volcano cradled a crater lake, a pool of icy water perched dangerously on its peak. That night, the wall of the crater gave way, a massive lahar, a volcanic mudflow of rock, ash and water, thundered down the mountainside, racing into the Wangaihu River. Within minutes, the river rose violently, ripping apart the railway bridge at Tangiwai. The timing could not have been worse. At 10:21 p.m., the express train approached Tangiwai Bridge. The engine driver, Charles Parker, and fireman, Lance Redman, saw something was wrong. The river below churned with mud and debris, but it was too late. The bridge had already collapsed. With a deafening roar, the locomotive plunged into the raging torrent, dragging 5 carriages with it. Only a few carriages at the back miraculously stayed on the tracks, their passengers screaming as they watched the others vanish into the flood. The scene was unimaginable. Some passengers were trapped inside the sinking carriages. Others managed to smash windows, throwing themselves into the freezing waters, only to be swept away by the lahar's fury. In the darkness, survivors clung to debris, calling for loved ones who would never answer. Local residents rushed from their homes, forming human chains, pulling the injured from the riverbanks. But for many, there was nothing to be done. By dawn, the scale of the disaster was clear. 151 people had lost their lives, making it the worst rail disaster in New Zealand's history. Bodies were found downstream for weeks. Families waiting at Christmas gatherings never saw their loved ones again. A country that had prepared for celebration instead woke to grief. News spread rapidly. Prime Minister Sydney Holland visited the site. Queen Elizabeth II, just months into her reign, sent her deepest condolences, marking the first time a British monarch had made a personal statement to New Zealand about such a tragedy. The nation mourned together, churches filled with grieving families. For many, Christmas would never feel the same again. Amid tragedy, acts of bravery shone through. The driver and fireman, Charles Parker and Lance Redman, died at their posts, desperately trying to slow the train. Their sacrifice likely saved the last few carriages and dozens of lives. Ordinary locals who rushed into the river in the pitch black risked everything to save strangers. The Tangiwai disaster became not only a story of loss, but of courage. Investigations that followed revealed the fragile relationship between nature and man's creations. New Zealand realized the danger of lahars, prompting new monitoring systems around Mount Ruapehu. Memorials were built, not just to honor the dead, but to remind future generations of the price paid on that fateful night. Even today, survivors and families of victims remember Tangiwai not only as a tragedy, but a turning point. When a natural disaster collided with human vulnerability, the Tangiwai Railway Disaster was more than a train crash. It was a night when Christmas joy turned into national mourning. When a volcano reminded mankind of its power. 151 lives lost, countless stories left unfinished. But from the darkness came lessons of resilience, sacrifice, and the fragile line between life and disaster. This is Story District. If you want more untold tragedies, haunting disasters, and forgotten history brought to life, subscribe now, because the past has stories you'll never forget.